The 1970s were a wild frontier for cinema. Filmmakers were no longer afraid of rules, and some pushed their cameras into places that audiences had never seen before. Tonight, we uncover 13 of the most disturbing movies ever made. Each one crossed a line that society was not ready to face. And as this countdown moves closer to number 1, the darkness only grows deeper. The Toolbox Murders, 1978. In the late 1970s, exploitation cinema had already pushed boundaries that mainstream studios would never dare approach. Yet, even inside that chaotic landscape, one film managed to shock distributors and audiences alike. The Toolbox Murders arrived in 1978 like a grim urban nightmare that felt too close to reality. Directed by Dennis Donnelly and produced by exploitation specialist Tony Didio, the film was marketed as a brutal crime story rather than supernatural horror. That decision made the violence feel disturbingly real. The story unfolds inside a quiet Los Angeles apartment building where a masked killer begins hunting female tenants using ordinary household tools: a drill, a hammer, a nail gun. Objects meant for repair suddenly become instruments of terror. The film's first act is particularly infamous. Within minutes, viewers witness a series of savage attacks staged with uncomfortable realism. There is no comic relief and no heroic rescue. Only the slow realization that this building has become a trap. What terrified censors was not simply the violence, it was the film's cold tone. Exploitation movies often exaggerate their brutality with melodrama or fantasy. The Toolbox Murders does the opposite. The killings unfold with quiet tension and unsettling stillness. The killer hides in shadows and watches victims through cracked doors like a predator studying prey. When the film reached the United Kingdom in the early 1980s, the British Board of Film Classification refused to approve it. Authorities believed its graphic violence could inspire real-world crimes. During the notorious Video Nasties crackdown, the movie became one of the most controversial titles seized by police and removed from shelves. Ironically, the same controversy turned the film into underground legend. Horror fans searched for bootleg tapes for years. Today, the film survives as a reminder of a time when exploitation cinema walked a razor-thin line between shock entertainment and public outrage. Number 12. The Driller Killer, 1979. If the Toolbox Murders portrayed urban violence as a nightmare hiding inside everyday life, then the Driller Killer transformed the city itself into a psychological prison. Directed by Abel Ferrara in 1979, the film became one of the most infamous titles of the entire exploitation era. Ferrara shot the film in gritty New York neighborhoods during a time when the city was drowning in crime and decay. The story follows Reno Miller, an artist slowly losing his grip on reality while trying to finish a massive painting. Bills pile up, neighbors blast punk music all night, homeless people wander the streets outside his window. Pressure builds until his fragile mind finally collapses. The tool of destruction is painfully simple: a handheld power drill. Reno begins roaming the streets at night, hunting homeless victims in scenes filmed with raw documentary-style intensity. The attacks feel chaotic and uncontrolled. Ferrara avoided glossy filmmaking techniques and instead used handheld cameras and harsh lighting that made the violence feel disturbingly authentic. When the film reached Britain, it became the center of a national scandal. A newspaper campaign accused horror films of corrupting young audiences. One poster for The Driller Killer showed a man holding a drill toward the viewer with the slogan saying there are no prizes for guessing what he does with it. That image triggered political outrage. Soon, the film was placed on the Video Nasties list and banned entirely. Police raided video stores across the country, confiscating copies as if they were dangerous contraband. Ironically, many critics later praised the film as a bleak portrait of urban isolation rather than simple exploitation. Today, The Driller Killer remains a powerful time capsule of 1970s New York and a chilling example of how psychological collapse can transform an ordinary man into something monstrous. Number 11. SS Experiment Love Camp, 1976. During the mid-1970s, a strange and disturbing exploitation subgenre began appearing in European cinemas. These films combined wartime imagery with shocking cruelty, creating what critics later called the Nazi-ploitation cycle. Among the most notorious of these films was SS Experiment Love Camp, released in 1976. Directed by Sergio Garoni, the film tells the story of a secret Nazi prison camp where female prisoners are subjected to grotesque medical experiments designed to test human endurance. The premise alone pushed the limits of taste, but the film's disturbing imagery pushed it even further. Unlike traditional war movies that portray heroism or sacrifice, this film focuses entirely on suffering. Prisoners are treated as laboratory subjects while camp officers observe their pain with clinical detachment. Scenes unfold with slow, deliberate pacing that forces viewers to confront the cruelty rather than escape it. What made the film especially controversial was its combination of historical imagery and exploitation storytelling. Critics argued that turning Nazi atrocities into shock entertainment crossed an ethical line that cinema should never approach. Many countries agreed. Sub-posters promised forbidden sights in 1920s. Posters promised forbidden sights and shocking realism. Audiences were both horrified and fascinated. Over time, the Nazi-ploitation genre faded away, but its legacy remains deeply controversial. Historians still debate whether these films exploited historical tragedy or reflected society's darker curiosity about power and cruelty. One thing is certain. Even among exploitation movies, SS Experiment Love Camp stands as one of the most uncomfortable viewing experiences ever released. Number 10. The Gestapo's Last Orgy, 1977. If SS Experiment Love Camp introduced audiences to the disturbing world of Naziploitation, then The Gestapo's Last Orgy pushed that concept to its absolute limit. Released in 1977 and directed by Cesare Canivari, the film remains one of the most controversial exploitation productions ever made. The story begins after the Second World War, when a former concentration camp commandant returns to the ruins of the prison where he once held absolute power. As he walks through the abandoned barracks, memories begin to surface. The film then plunges into a series of flashbacks, revealing the horrifying events that occurred inside the camp. Unlike many exploitation films that focus purely on shock value, this movie attempts to explore psychological trauma and guilt. Survivors confront their former tormentor, forcing him to relive the cruelty he inflicted on prisoners. Yet the film's graphic scenes and brutal tone overshadow its deeper themes. Censors around the world reacted quickly. Many countries banned the movie outright, arguing that its disturbing imagery exploited real historical suffering for entertainment. Even today, the film remains difficult to find in uncut form. Despite the controversy, some critics argue that the film serves as a disturbing reminder of humanity's darkest chapters. Others insist it represents exploitation cinema at its most irresponsible. Whatever the interpretation, one thing remains undeniable. The Gestapo's Last Orgy crossed boundaries that few filmmakers have dared approach since. Number 9. Fight for Your Life, 1977. Few exploitation films of the 1970s created outrage as quickly as Fight for Your Life. Released in 1977 and directed by Robert A. Endelson, the film delivered a brutal home invasion story that pushed audiences into deeply uncomfortable territory. The plot begins with 3 violent criminals escaping from prison. Led by the sadistic Jesse Lee Kane, the group searches for a place to hide from police. Their escape route leads them to the home of a quiet preacher and his family. What follows is a relentless nightmare of psychological torment. Unlike traditional thrillers that rely on suspenseful cat and mouse games, this film traps the victims inside their own home while the criminals slowly take control of every aspect of their lives. Kane's character is particularly disturbing. He taunts the preacher with cruel insults and challenges his faith in front of his terrified family. What made the film so controversial was its raw depiction of cruelty and racial hostility. Kane's hateful dialogue shocked audiences and critics alike. Many theaters refused to screen the film after early showings provoked angry protests. Censorship boards in several countries banned the movie entirely, believing its disturbing themes crossed moral boundaries. Even in regions where it was allowed, the film often played only in small grindhouse cinemas far away from mainstream theaters. Over time, Fight for Your Life developed a reputation as one of the harshest exploitation films ever produced. Modern viewers often find it difficult to watch because the tension feels brutally realistic. Number 8. I Spit on Your Grave, 1978. When I Spit on Your Grave premiered in 1978, audiences were not prepared for what they were about to witness. Directed by Mir Zarchi, the film quickly became one of the most controversial movies in exploitation history. The story follows Jennifer Hills, a writer who travels to a quiet rural cabin hoping to find inspiration for her next novel. Instead, she becomes the target of a group of violent men who terrorize the isolated countryside. The first half of the film is almost unbearable in its cruelty. Zarki presents the brutality with harsh realism, refusing to soften the horror of the situation. But the film then shifts dramatically. Jennifer survives and begins planning revenge against the men who destroyed her peaceful retreat. Each confrontation becomes a calculated act of justice that turns the predators into victims. Critics fiercely debated the film's message. Some argued it exploited violence purely for shock value. Others believed it delivered a powerful story about survival and revenge against cruelty. Censorship boards across the world responded harshly. The film was banned in several countries for decades and heavily cut in many others. In the United Kingdom, it remained prohibited for years during the video nasties panic. Despite the bans, the movie became legendary among horror fans who viewed it as one of the most uncompromising revenge films ever made. Number 7. Night Train Murders, 1975. By the middle of the 1970s, Italian exploitation cinema had become notorious for transforming shocking headlines into brutal stories designed to disturb audiences. One of the most infamous examples arrived in 1975 with Night Train Murders. Directed by Aldo Lado, the film disguised itself as a quiet holiday drama before descending into one of the bleakest revenge narratives of the decade. The story begins during the Christmas season. Two young girls board a train hoping to reach their families for the holiday celebration. At first, the atmosphere feels almost peaceful. Snow falls outside the windows. Passengers chat quietly. But that calm slowly unravels when two criminals board the train and begin manipulating everyone around them. What follows is a disturbing series of events that unfold inside the cramped train compartments. The villains play cruel psychological games with the passengers while slowly isolating the two young girls. Director Aldo Lado builds tension with long, quiet scenes that feel suffocating. The train becomes a moving prison. There is nowhere to escape. The film's final act delivers a shocking reversal. When the truth about the criminals reaches the girls' families, the story transforms into a brutal tale of revenge. Violence returns with terrifying intensity as grief and rage replace fear. Authorities in several countries reacted strongly to the film's disturbing themes. Some regions banned the movie outright, while others demanded severe cuts before it could be shown in theaters. Critics argued the film crossed the line between suspense and cruelty. Yet many modern historians consider Night Train Murders one of the most technically impressive exploitation films of the decade. Its haunting atmosphere and moral darkness make it impossible to forget. Number 6. Emanuelle in America. 1977. At first glance, Emanuelle in America appeared to be just another entry in the long-running Black Emanuelle exploitation series. But when director Joe D'Amato released the film in 1977, audiences quickly realized this was something far darker than the earlier adventures. The film follows journalist Emanuelle as she investigates a mysterious underground world rumored to contain forbidden recordings. Her curiosity leads her across several countries as she uncovers disturbing secrets hidden beneath glamorous social circles. Unlike typical exploitation films that rely on simple shock tactics, this story unfolds like a twisted investigation. Emanuelle slowly discovers evidence suggesting that wealthy elites collect secret films depicting real acts of violence. The implication alone was enough to disturb audiences. One particular sequence became infamous among censorship boards. During her search, Emanuelle discovers footage that appears to show a real killing, captured on camera. The scene created intense controversy because it blurred the line between fiction and reality. Some viewers believed the film might actually contain genuine death footage. Authorities in several countries immediately restricted the movie. Distributors were forced to remove certain scenes before screenings could continue. Even decades later, the film remains controversial because of the disturbing questions it raises about exploitation and voyeurism. Joe D'Amato defended his work by arguing that the film was meant to expose the dark curiosity that drives people to watch forbidden images. Whether viewers accepted that explanation depended entirely on their tolerance for disturbing cinema. Number 5. Snuff, 1976. Few exploitation films in history caused as much panic as Snuff. Released in 1976, The movie did not become infamous because of its story. It became infamous because of the shocking marketing campaign that surrounded it. The film was originally produced in South America under a different title, but when American distributors purchased the movie, they realized the story itself was not enough to attract attention. Instead, they created one of the most controversial advertising strategies ever attempted in cinema. Promotional posters claimed the film contained footage of a real murder captured on camera. The idea that audiences might be watching an actual killing immediately triggered outrage. Protesters gathered outside theaters demanding the movie be banned before anyone could see it. Inside the film, the story follows a group of criminals traveling through remote areas while committing violent acts. The production quality is rough and chaotic, which only added to the disturbing realism. But the final scene is what fueled the controversy. During what appears to be a normal film shoot, the actors suddenly attack a woman, and the camera continues recording as the crime unfolds. Whether the scene was staged or genuine became the subject of intense debate. Authorities eventually confirmed the killing was fictional, but by then the scandal had already spread across newspapers and television reports. Many countries banned the movie entirely believing the marketing itself was dangerous. Critics argued that Snuff represented the most cynical moment in exploitation cinema, where shock value replaced storytelling completely. Yet the film's notoriety only grew stronger over time. For decades, it remained one of the most talked about underground horror films ever produced. Number 4. Ilsa, She-Wolf of the SS, 1975. During the 1970s exploitation, filmmakers often searched for ways to shock audiences with extreme imagery. Few productions achieved that goal as brutally as Ilsa, She-Wolf of the SS, released in 1975. The film quickly became one of the most controversial titles of the entire decade. Directed by Don Edmonds, the movie tells the story of Ilsa, a ruthless commandant who oversees a secret Nazi prison camp. Her goal is to conduct twisted experiments designed to prove that women can endure more pain than men. The premise alone was enough to disturb critics, but the film's execution made it far more controversial. Ilsa is portrayed as a sadistic authority figure who treats prisoners as disposable test subjects. Scenes inside the camp focus on psychological domination and brutal punishment. Unlike many war films that depict heroic resistance, this movie concentrates entirely on cruelty and power. Censors in multiple countries refused to allow the film to be shown publicly. Authorities argued the combination of Nazi imagery and exploitation storytelling was deeply offensive and historically irresponsible. Several governments banned the movie for decades. Despite the bans, the film became a cult phenomenon among underground cinema fans. Bootleg copies circulated secretly while horror magazines debated whether the movie represented shocking satire or pure exploitation. Even today, the legacy of Ilsa, She-Wolf of the SS remains divisive. Some viewers see it as an artifact of the chaotic exploitation era. Others believe it crossed moral boundaries that cinema should never approach. Number 3. The Last House on the Left, 1972. Before he became famous for directing mainstream horror classics, Wes Craven shocked audiences with a film so disturbing that many theaters refused to show it. The Last House on the Left arrived in 1972 and immediately earned a reputation as one of the most brutal revenge stories ever filmed. The plot begins with two teenage girls traveling to a concert in the city. Their simple day of excitement quickly turns into a nightmare when they encounter a group of escaped criminals led by a sadistic man named Krug. What follows is a relentless journey through cruelty and fear. Yet Craven filmed the story with raw documentary-style techniques that made the violence feel disturbingly authentic. Instead of stylized horror effects, the film presents human cruelty in a painfully realistic way. The criminals behave unpredictably, which makes every moment feel dangerous. The final act delivers a shocking twist when the criminals unknowingly seek refuge inside the home of one victim's parents. When the truth emerges, the grieving parents transform from ordinary citizens into relentless agents of revenge. The film triggered outrage from censorship boards around the world. Many countries banned it outright, while others demanded severe edits before allowing limited screenings. Critics accused the movie of exploiting violence for entertainment, yet others argued the film forced viewers to confront the terrifying reality of human brutality rather than hide behind fantasy monsters. Regardless of interpretation, The Last House on the Left became a landmark exploitation film that redefined what horror cinema could depict. Number 2. The House on the Edge of the Park, 1979. In 1979, Italian director Ruggero Deodato delivered another controversial exploitation thriller that quickly became notorious across Europe and North America. The House on the Edge of the Park presented a brutal home invasion story that felt disturbingly grounded in reality. The film follows two violent criminals who accept an invitation to attend a luxurious party at a secluded mansion. At first, the wealthy guests treat the newcomers with amused curiosity, but the situation quickly spirals into chaos when the criminals reveal their true intentions. What unfolds is an escalating nightmare of psychological terror. See, the intruders manipulate the frightened guests, turning the elegant party into a desperate struggle for survival. Deodato stages the violence with unsettling realism, forcing viewers to witness every moment of humiliation and fear. Censorship boards reacted quickly. The movie was banned in the United Kingdom during the video nasty's crackdown and heavily restricted in several other countries. Authorities believed the film's brutal tone and relentless cruelty made it unsuitable for public viewing. Over time, the movie gained a reputation as one of the harshest exploitation thrillers of the era. Critics often describe it as a grim reflection of the violent anxieties that haunted the late 1970s. Number 1. Cannibal Holocaust, 1980. When Cannibal Holocaust appeared at the end of the exploitation era, it immediately became the most controversial film connected to the entire movement. Directed by Ruggero Deodato, the movie was released in 1980, but it grew directly out of the brutal filmmaking culture of the 1970s. The story follows a rescue team searching the Amazon rainforest for a group of missing documentary filmmakers. When the team discovers the lost crew's footage, the film shifts into a terrifying reconstruction of what happened to them. The recovered recordings reveal that the filmmakers themselves behaved with shocking cruelty toward the local tribes they were documenting. Their reckless actions eventually trigger a violent response that leads to their destruction. What made Cannibal Holocaust so infamous was its documentary-style presentation. Deodato shot the film using techniques that made the footage appear authentic. Some scenes were so realistic that Italian authorities believed the actors had actually been killed. The director was arrested and forced to bring the cast to court to prove they were alive. Even after the investigation ended, the movie was banned in numerous countries because of its graphic violence and controversial imagery. For decades, the film remained one of the most difficult titles to legally distribute. Some regions still restrict the uncut version today. Whether viewed as a critique of sensational media or as the ultimate exploitation shock film, Cannibal Holocaust represents the moment when the genre reached its darkest extreme. The exploitation era proved one thing: when filmmakers chase shock without limits, the results can shake the entire world. These 13 films still haunt cinema history with their brutality and controversy. Some remain restricted even today, but their legacy survives as a warning about how far cinema once dared to go.